Hey everybody, welcome to Navel Gazing on valleyindy.org. You can also hear this podcast talk show on 103.5 WNHH, New Haven's community radio station, and we're available on iTunes, SoundCloud, Libsyn, and YouTube. Today, it's Ansonia Day on the podcast. Joining us is Ansonia Mayor David Cassetti. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, everyone.
Then sitting next to Mayor Cassetti is Ansonia's Economic Development Director and grant writer, Sheila O'Malley. Welcome, Miss O'Malley.
Hi, Eugene. Hi, Ethan. Thanks for having us.
Morning.
And that's Ethan Fry. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
And then last and certainly not least is Ansonia's Corporation Counsel and an Ansonia resident himself and a former alderman, John Marini.
Good morning.
Good morning. So first, we should talk about HomeGoods right off the bat, because we had a story saying HomeGoods is coming, and looking back, I think we published the story too early before making an additional phone call, I think, and the mayor might have. You're shaking your head no, Sheila.
I don't think so. I thought it was a good story.
Just go into the mic a little bit.
I actually thought it was a good story. You jumped on top of it. You were the first ones to get it out there.
But we thought it was going to be taking up a complete separate storefront in that shopping center, in the Big Y shopping center. For anybody who doesn't live in Ansonia or doesn't know what we're talking about, there was announcements last week saying that HomeGoods is coming to Ansonia into the Big Y shopping center, but it turns out it's coming to inside Marshall's. Can you explain what's going on with HomeGoods?
It's going to co-locate with Marshall's. Can you hear?
I can hear better. Yeah, you can't be more than a hands.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
Let me get 'em. It's going to co-locate with Marshall's. They may need additional space, and there is space to bump out if needed, but right now they're going to co-locate.
Does that mean we had one of our readers say online, somebody from Massachusetts stumbled across the story and said, hey, we have this in Massachusetts. Essentially what it is, there's two extra pieces of furniture and they slap on a HomeGoods banner. Is it going to be more? Because people, I guess my point is this, we wrote that story and it got like 52,000 reads, which is extraordinary for us. So it's a really good thing for Ansonia. But we want to make sure it is what it is. And I know it's still early. So when you say co-locate, can you explain, how many square foot is it going to be in the store? What is it going to be? Because I still can't visualize what's going to be happening there.
They're actually going to, I think, split it in half, but HomeGoods may need at least maybe additional space other than half of it.
Okay, so that's news right there.
Yeah,
okay.
They'll have all of, everything that they have in a regular store. They're going to try to contain it into one store with both Marshall's and HomeGoods. But there's going to be furniture, lamps, rugs, paint.
So it's probably. It sounds like it's more of a subdivide, if I'm using that word correctly.
Correct.
Where 50, because Marshall's is a good size, and if 50% of that becomes HomeGoods,
correct.
That's a better thing. And the reason I had said we had kind of messed up, and I'll just talk through it's our responsibility to get things as accurately as humanly possible, and because we're human, sometimes that doesn't happen. And I thought on our end, I had Ethan covering a Board of Aldermen meeting that night, and I asked you for two stories that night, HomeGoods and one on the budget, which looking back, that was kind of stupid. And had we held that story for one extra day, it would have been probably 100% correct if we just took a little extra time. But again, I never thought to call the Big Y owner. We did reach out to the store themselves. So anyway, that's that. So that's HomeGoods. Is there anything anybody wants to add to that?
No, I mean, if you just talk to Alan Schwartz.
Yeah. I should say most, shopping center owners don't just pick up the phone for reporters when they call, but
Right.
Mr. Schwartz did. So thank you for that.
So moving on.
Which is why I didn't call him in the first place. It's like, oh, that guy will never talk to me, but
That's
he did,
how.
So
Yeah, I think at least
don't assume,
At our level, 90% of our mistakes aren't because we hate Republicans or Democrats or are out to get Mayor Cassetti. It's that we make assumptions and we make mistakes that way. Wakelee Avenue.
Oh, boy.
This is another one I'm kind of shocked by, well, not shocked, but it's a concern among Ansonia residents, obviously, as you'll probably all know personally. There's a construction project that's been going on there for a while. I just drove on the road this morning to go get some coffee up in Seymour. And, there's a long-running project. It's going to be a $4.8 million reconstruction of that road. So we know eventually it's going to be in good shape. But it seems to be stuck in this purgatory this sort of patchy-filled purgatory where there's not a lot of work going on, and it's a pain to drive on. What's the latest?
I have a
there?
meeting this morning at 11:30 with Eversource Gas where I'm going to instruct them. I had them repair the road from Jackson heading north towards Franklin. Now I'm going to tell them that I want to go from Jackson heading south towards Division Street to mill out certain areas where they had put just the first course of asphalt in and they didn't put a second course in, and I'm going to have them level that all off.
Yeah, and what's the? It seems that project has been taking a long time. There's like the Eversource part of it. There was an article in the Register last year saying the reconstruction was already supposed to have started, and it seems like has anything? When's the last time somebody was there with a piece of machinery doing work?
There's two separate projects. The Eversource project should occur and did occur in advance of our project. However, I think they jumped the gun a little bit. I mean, this has been a year-long project for Eversource. They probably could have started about 3 or 4 months ago to kind of coincide with our bidding out of the Wakelee Avenue project, which is the $4.8 million reconstruction project. So I believe first and foremost, they started kind of early on this, which caused the pain and suffering to continue on for a year, where it could have been maybe a 3 to 6 month period. But, I mean, Yankee Gas, the mayor's been out there repeatedly. The public works director's been out there to check their work and to complain and to on behalf of the residents. So, I anticipate that our Wakelee Avenue project, the $4.8 million project, will occur. Hopefully there will be no bumps in the road, so to speak, with our project. We're going to try to make it as smooth as possible for the residents.
And what's happening on the road right now?
In terms of Yankee Gas, what are they doing now?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I believe Yankee Gas, or
I just know I drive on the road.
It's Eversource. It's not Yankee Gas. It
They'll
was
yell at
Yankee
you
Gas.
if you say Yankee
So
Gas.
Eversource is done with the services. They're doing restoration work to the lawns. They're basically done. But I'm meeting with them this morning to tell them that I want more paving done on the south side.
Okay, gotcha. So we're at the point where they're done with what they have to do, and now they're coming back and
they're all done.
Fixing up.
And let's be clear, their contractor is insured. So to the extent that anyone has suffered any damages to their vehicles or to their property, and we've heard reports of damages, some anecdotal, I believe, some directly reported to us, all of those claims will go directly to, or should go directly to, the insurance company that's responsible. And we will be sure to make that information available to the residents so they know exactly where to submit their claims.
And in terms of, I live on Hawthorne Avenue in Derby, where we had a complete road reconstruction, and for a while, it's a pain in the neck, and it is what it is with dust, but the end result was good. Mayor, what's the specific issue with what Eversource did? As a layman, all I know is I drive on the road and there's patches everywhere. What did they do wrong?
Eversource didn't do anything wrong. It's their contractor, Eugene. Their contractor is a pipeline specialist. That's what they do. They're not paving specialists. What they did is they dug, they installed the pipe, and then they backfilled, and they just put asphalt down. And they didn't do it the proper way. You're supposed to do asphalt in lifts, an 1.5 lip and an 1.5 lift. And they didn't do it that way, and that's called the ripple effect on all of it. So when the people drive down there, they're banging their front ends. They didn't properly pave it.
Okay, gotcha. And now the hope is, how come the second part of the job, or the separate main part of the job, hasn't started? And when will that start?
The main part of what job?
No, it's not
repairing
part
the
of
road.
Eversource's project. This is the city's
separate,
project.
the big part.
Road reconstruction.
Yeah.
Because when speaking with the residents, they wanted the road project to extend out and to add additional sidewalks onto the project. We went back to the region for additional funding. We're going to try to also include lighting for the residents. So it bumped up almost $800,000 more for additional funding. And, when you get grant funding, there's a process. So there are 3 layers of reviews, which the final design has to go through. They're right now doing a peer review. They already did a regional review with the COG, and they will then have to submit to the DOT for final approval of the design. So there's three layers of reviews, and that process takes quite a bit of time.
So that's why, because I know the original press conference with all this was back in 2015, I want to say.
I think so, yeah. And
but the project expanded since then, and thus the start date of the Wakelee Avenue reconstruction that the city is kicking in some money for and getting paid for primarily through, I guess, federal and state grants, that was pushed as the project grew. And it's still under... When do you think it's going to start?
Well, we hope to get the project out to bid by August with final approval from DOT, hopefully in August. So we'll put it out to bid. Hopefully we'll start in September. We may get lucky and have another warm winter season so they can work straight through till December maybe, even though the paving
plants close.
But hopefully they'll have a warm summer to work through and then start up again in March.
I should note that this project is working at record speed. I mean, I made the comment, and it's the truth, Eugene, that the Hill Street and Prindle Avenue jobs were Tom Clifford's administration back in 91. This project didn't start until 2007, 2009. I mean, we're moving at record speed on this project on Wakelee Avenue, but it's got to go through the proper channels.
It's got to go through government, the deep state, and that kind of slows
if you want
things
money,
down.
if you want grant funds.
And you're talking about a lot of money here for the residents.
Right.
Yeah,
you're talking about just about $5 million for the residents.
One more question, and then I'll shut up because the project is $4.8 million, but that's not. Does that include, or does not include what the city is kicking in? How much is this?
City has a 10% match. Or in other words, we match the engineering.
Okay, gotcha.
And then what's if somebody's front end is screwed up? The procedure for like submitting a claim, will that be on like the city's website? Or?
Exactly. I've already requested the information from Eversource's contractor. Once I receive that information, we will publish it on Facebook, on the city's website, and we've had a lot of talk about going directly to the residents that live on Wakelee Avenue, distributing it maybe in the form of a flyer. That way everyone is aware that if there is damage, there is a path to reimbursement. There is a way to submit that claim. We don't want to leave anyone in the dark about a remedy for damage to their vehicle or their home.
Mayor, how often do you hear from residents on Wakelee Avenue or the roads that it's a heavily populated area? How often do you hear from people?
I don't hear from many people. There's probably 4 or 5 that come down and made complaints about it.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I figured your phone is ringing off the hook every day like our Facebook page.
Yeah. I guess it's just the Facebook community on the Valley Indy.
Next topic, or do you have a follow-up on
No. Go ahead, yeah.
No, I'm done. That's it. I retire. Those are I just wanted to hear about HomeGoods and Wakelee Avenue.
Okay,
now I'm going to take a nap.
All right, so we're recording this June 19th.
I'll probably publish this immediately.
Okay, so we're recording this Monday, June 19th. Tomorrow, the night of June 20th, there will be a public hearing and special alderman's meeting at the high school,
At the high school.
It's going to be at the high school
7
auditorium, 7 o'clock. We've done a couple stories on it recently that you could read at valleyindy.org, but basically the budget that the aldermen have in front of them now, taxes will remain flat year over year. The school district will be getting like a few $100,000 more, but
over $500,000 more.
They've had to. They've just laid off, cut about 16 positions, which will result in about 9 layoffs. It's been. I mean, there's still uncertainty, I guess, over the state budget, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
If you could just. Like what's the latest in terms of like the state, the uncertainty with that, and
we're waiting to hear from the state at this point in time. I'm hoping that by the middle of July to have something from the state. I hope something comes in. I'm sure that they're haggling with it right now.
And basically, like the city has to put together a budget before knowing how much it'll be getting from the state. And in a city like Ansonia, which gets tens of millions of dollars in state aid, that uncertainty is causes anxiety here, I guess. Like, say the state comes in and says, has to cut the state aid that Ansonia gets. What will happen then? Will you guys have to go back to the alderman? What will go on?
But that's a good question. That's exactly why the alderman and the mayor's office worked to come up with a worst case scenario budget. The mayor originally proposed a worst case scenario budget back in February. Since then, His finance staff has worked very closely with the aldermen and also with members of the Board of Apportionment and Taxation, and that we've come up with, I think, a worst-case budget scenario that is improved over where it was back in February, but it's still a worst-case budget scenario. So it anticipates that worst case of the state coming in with perhaps less funding than before. So, the mayor, the staff, the aldermen believe at this point they've put out the most responsible budget possible in terms of protecting taxpayers and also funding departments at a reasonable level to preserve vital services. But of course, it still is. You see the spending. It's a several $1 million cut overall from last year. So spending has gone down. The city side in particular is really tight, really trying to live within its means, trying to do with less than it did with last year, while still being able to allocate over $500,000 extra to the Board of Education. Some cuts to the library were concerning. That was a big topic some months ago. A lot of that funding has been restored. We found different ways to save. For example, an early retirement offer that was put out and that was actually taken up by an employee at the library, saving over $50,000 per year. The position won't be replaced. And the result is money was saved from a department like the library without having to sacrifice any hours. Same thing with recreational programs. Larger cuts were proposed. Some of that funding has been restored. And so really you've seen the result of a lot of hard work on the part of our aldermen on the finance committee, led by Charlie Stowe, and also the mayor and his finance team, really working hard to try to make really the fairest budget possible, given the very unfair circumstances that Hartford has put us in. And certainly I think the whole board is open to revisiting things once Hartford sets a budget, but they don't want to do the same thing to the residents that the state is doing to the cities. That is, they don't want to put the residents in limbo without a budget. And if they go past the 20th, there won't be. It is the 20th. It is tomorrow.
Okay. So there'll be a public hearing, and then it'll be up for adoption.
A special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to potentially adopt the budget.
They will not be able to leave that room until a budget. It's going to be like the old time recreation.
That's how they started the recreation camp in Derby.
But at one of those meetings last week, Tommy Thompson, the budget consultant, somebody had asked him like, "Hey, what will happen with the fund balance?" This budget the aldermen are looking at tomorrow. It anticipates taking over more than $4 million.
Not anymore.
$3.5 million. Excuse me. I'm sorry. $3.5 million from the city's fund balance. The budget consultant for the city, he said at that meeting that it's getting, it's very dangerous to do that. The fund balance is getting way too low. At the time, they had been contemplating $4 million. Now $3.5 million. That's good. It's a step in the right direction, I guess. But how do you not do that next year? You've pledged not to go back to the fund balance if you're reelected in November. You're going to have to cut millions of dollars more from the budget, won't you?
Yes,
to make that
possibly.
Work?
He's saying it's dangerously low. It's at 8 or 10% right now. I mean, what's dangerously low? I mean, Derby has a 2.5 or 3% fund balance. They're dangerously low, but we're not.
Yeah, comparatively speaking, I mean, it's all, you have to put everything in perspective. Of course, comparatively speaking, even using the $3.5 million or $4 million, Ansonia still has a more robust fund balance than many of the other communities around us, and actually many of the communities in Connecticut. You even have issues in Fairfield. They're struggling to try to get their fund balance to 8% of their total budget. By comparison, Derby is in a completely different position.
Isn't Fairfield, like grand list wise, in a little better position than the city of Ansonia?
Well, it's the reserve.
No disrespect,
it's the reserve. I mean, it's essentially what you're putting away, what is undesignated. So if you compare locally, again, Derby struggling to maintain around 3 to 4%. And this is while, of course, spending is increasing. And even given the fact that they've had tax increases over the past 3 years, where the city of Ansonia has not. So comparatively speaking, we're very strong. But we hired a budget consultant like Tommy Thompson because he was very conservative and because he does share the mayor's desire to make things better. So, of course, we want to preserve our
previously
advantage.
work for the city of Derby? Wasn't that his last
Yes, he did.
job?
Several municipalities he worked for.
And his advice has always been the same, to try to maintain that balance as strong as possible given the circumstances. So I believe we are tracking in the right direction, 500,000 additional that we don't have to use from the fund balance. We're kind of trying to wean off of that, but definitely looking towards the future. You're talking about opportunities for reorganization, opportunities for combined services, trying to maintain what we have, but do it in a more cost-effective way. And this is really the big push all over Connecticut. It's something that has to be done, but that is not being done enough. The fact of the matter is the residents shouldn't have to pay higher and higher and higher taxes when services across Connecticut are being duplicated. They're essentially, you're having small towns right next to each other providing the same services, but not going in with each other to save dollars. So there's different ways of looking at things. The mayor's a big proponent of that, working with the state to find out where those efficiencies will be. And of course, within the city itself, trying to find out ways to cooperate, have departments work together with them, with each other to realize savings.
And we want to use that state money, if we get enough, to put some money back into the fund balance. So that's our intention.
Yeah, there's an given what the state budget is, in a best case scenario, there's a great opportunity here to not only fund the departments at the levels they need to be at, but also put more money back in the reserve. But of course, the worst case scenario, at the very least, the taxpayers are protected and the fund balance will be used as minimally as possible. But again, a lot remains to be seen given the state budget is not out.
I mean, every place I've ever worked as a reporter, like the public officials have said, like, hey, let's work together, let's consolidate more, let's regionalize more. I mean, I've only worked in the Valley since 2012, but every public official there seems to be a spirit of a willingness to do that. But when the rubber meets the road in terms of we went to meetings where they talked about consolidating educational services in Ansonia and Derby, and there was a couple meetings, and then it just sort of.
Well, in Derby, they talked about consolidating within their own city, and that failed.
Yeah, that UK.
There wasn't the will among the people
will to do that.
Well, even though there was political will, but it was the people themselves who said no. So I don't. That's
and like the same with they've been talking about consolidating sewer services for 5 years or more at least. So it's theoretically it'd be great if all these things were consolidated, but aren't there political realities that make it impossible? Like if this were so easy, wouldn't it have been done by now? And how are you guys going to change that going forward to realize actual change?
I think we've made a step in the right direction with the sewer interconnect. We now have a feasibility study underway. A consultant will be selected. They're going to study what those connections are going to be or can be with Derby, Seymour, Ansonia, Beacon Falls. So that's a step in the right direction. But I agree, there's some frustration. The mayor is a big proponent of regionalization, but it seems to be a touchy subject. We're very territorial in Connecticut. We have these little tiny communities that just don't seem to want to branch out. But hopefully, there seems to be willingness on the part of Ansonia, so hopefully we will. And we've reached out to Seymour, and we've been talking about ways we can consolidate or regionalize our building department. So those talks are underway. I guess that's a first big step.
I guess for anybody who doesn't follow local government closely, the whole issue is, the city of Ansonia has grown its grand list in the last couple of years. That's been happening, but it just can't keep up with the expenses of running a city. That's essentially what the problem is?
Well, I don't know. That's, I guess, perspective. Really, there is no problem. Really, the grand list has grown 3 years in a row.
But not huge. It's not. The fact that it's grown is
it's
pretty incredible.
Of course, if you're comparing, again, Derby, where have they gone? Right. Down. Right? Where have they gone in most places in Connecticut? Down. Most manufacturers, where have they gone? Out of Connecticut. In Ansonia, one of our real big accomplishments in terms of economic development, I think there's been a lot, but one of the biggest was, of course, keeping a manufacturer and growing a manufacturer in town. And that's just really one element. Exactly. Farrell Corporation, locating up on Fountain Lake. increasing their capacity to manufacture. And in fact, it's a state-of-the-art world headquarters now that exists in our city. But beyond that, you have economic development success everywhere, from the restaurants on Main Street to other manufacturers like Better Packages coming in, to the news of HomeGoods coming in, and also the development, commercial development adjacent to Target, and the transfer of the ATP Palmer building, that pending transfer for the development of further commercial downtown and residential. And we're going to tell you a little bit later in the interview today about another large employer coming into town, bringing more jobs. But all of this kind of, before we skip to that, all this economic development success is increasing the grand list. It's setting up the stage for more growth later on. Copper and brass, the 40 to 60 acres of space that we could remediate and develop. And you really have a board of aldermen that's seeing all of this development go on, along with the mayor, but they also don't want to go in the wrong way with taxes. So they've held the line in taxes.
Yeah, I was going to ask
yet they've been able to fund the departments. So the departments have been adequately funded. We believe they're doing better than ever. You see, for example, a department like Public Works, I think making a bigger, more visible difference in the city than ever before. And I think a lot of residents see that. The Board of Ed, like you can say, well, the Board of Ed, may have some issues. But when you look at the real
issues with the money you're allocating, we just received a letter to the editor, which I have not even read yet, but that's coming. But it's from Vinnie Scarlatta, who is on the Board of Education. Taking issue with a past column. So they have, I just say that because they're not here to talk about it, but they do have issues with funding.
And obviously it's the Board of Ed's going to be aggressive at lobbying for additional funds. That's the case all over Connecticut. They want what's best for the department and for the kids. And we do too. But when you look at the statistics, you do see a 3.7% average increase for the Board of Ed over the last 3 years. Now, again, that's another thing that stands out for Ansonia versus all the other towns in the area. We're giving a large amount, not just a large amount to education, we're funding education at a higher level than has ever been funded before. And you see a marked increase in funding over the last 3 years, 3.7% increase. You're looking at almost $1 million additional every year, and you have to understand that every time increases the minimum budget requirement, that increases that watermark for the schools. So essentially they can never go below that
the
mark.
Next year.
And in addition to that funding, you're talking about over $500,000 each year in additional services and additional funds that are being provided for insurance costs and other contractual costs. So not even counting, say, the bonding funding, funding for capital projects that the city has put up. So there's a lot of funding that's going on, a lot of funding that the city is transferring to the Board of Ed, hopefully helping their department get better for the benefit of the kids and the taxpayers.
Yeah, and I guess my point maybe was an opinionated thing, but I meant like with the grand list. I mean, it's growing, but it's almost like you feel like as no matter what some of these cities do, it's always like you're behind the eight ball.
But Eugene, you're right. You're making a very valid point. I just wanted to bring that up. The problem is that you're right. Government grows. Right? And we're trying to shrink government by regionalization and other ways, but the city doesn't grow. It's 6 square miles. So we can't get any bigger unless we regionalize, and I don't think people understand that. So the size of government can't keep increasing every year. It just can't possibly. We'll outpace ourselves. So we're trying everything we can.
And let's talk about this now. Corporation Counsel Marini dropped a little hint in there, I guess James Comey style. You mentioned a big employer that you're going to mention later in this podcast. Right. Why bury the lead? What's the news there? There's some discussions taking place as to who should.
I can give details.
You'll
intro it and then throw it.
I'm going to introduce it. Fletcher Thompson is coming to town. They're bringing 40 employees at 200 Main Street. And 20, I'm sorry. With a potential for 20 more.
Oh, and Fletcher Thompson is?
Fletcher Thompson is a nationally known architectural and engineering firm. They're one of the largest engineering and architectural firms in the Northeast. They have offices in New York City, New Jersey, and Bridgeport, and they're coming here to the 3rd floor. They're renting the entire 3rd floor.
This is the building essentially right next door? 200 Main Street, you said?
200 Main Street, where Headings is.
Where what?
New Headings.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So right across from like Wells Fargo Bank, I guess that would be.
Correct.
Okay. Kingston and
The old
and
Rifkin
Maine.
building.
All right, there you go. Say that into the mic.
The old Rifkin building.
So
at the corner of Kingston and Main Street.
So how'd you get him here?
It's about 6,700 square feet. We didn't. Tonino Mavuli and owns the building, and he's been trying to market. The city's been trying to help him, and they've been talking to Fletcher Thompson. They reached out, and they finally signed on.
And so when are they moving in? Maybe you said this. I'm sorry, but
They're already moved partially
They're in there. Okay.
Yep.
And
they have administrative staff, they have engineers, they have architects in there.
So that's some good news. We should just
great,
mention that
great
Tonino
news.
Mavuli, or the Mavuli
Yes,
family,
he's
is also our landlord.
Yeah, of the building.
So he's got
we're
good taste.
Performing this interview, yes, exactly.
All right, so that's good. All right, because later we got to ask about the Floyd Mayweather fight coming up. So just don't let me forget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just like a few things I wanted, like just a few topics that, running sort of topics in town that I wanted to check up on. The tax office investigation, the city's former tax collector, I should say, retired around late last year, early January. That at the time that there were quote unquote irregularities discovered in the tax office, the former tax collector hasn't been accused of any wrongdoing that we know of at this point, but she was retired with this investigation going on. Have you guys learned anything new since we last checked in on that, or what's the status of all that now?
Still with the chief and with the state. Still waiting to hear word back from them.
What level of state? Like what state office?
I believe he had been corresponding with the state's attorney's office under investigation. And last we had talked to him, we're on a wait and see basis. We're waiting to see from them what direction they're going to go in. So no additional information to share on that.
Okay, and like no, like there was not any allegation of like taxpayers' money that like went missing or anything like that. There was that was not part of the
nothing
allegations,
beyond what was reported at the time.
And that was just irregularities, and there was left at that. All right, the Winters brothers filed a lawsuit last year against the city, alleging that the city arbitrarily canceled its contract with them and steered the garbage hauling contract to another firm that you guys are all friends with. They're like the city's denied the allegations in court, and I think there was a hearing scheduled at some point this month, if I'm not mistaken. Is that what's the latest on the garbage lawsuit?
So nothing has really happened in quite a while. I believe the next pretrial is coming up, and we'll see from there if a hearing date will be set.
Do you think there will be like a trial in that, or will there be a settlement? Is there like an offer been made? Anything like that?
Well, it was slated for a prejudgment remedy hearing. However, that has not been actually scheduled yet.
Yeah, what's a prejudgment? Now that I have an attorney, I can finally find out these answers after 20 years of being a reporter.
So in certain cases, in advance of a trial, there will be a hearing that's essentially all about the likelihood of the plaintiff to prevail. If the plaintiff can convince a judge that it should prevail at a pre-judgment remedy hearing, then essentially the judge can order that the defendant put a certain amount of money, essentially in layman's terms, into reserve.
Is this like the plaintiff saying, my case is so good, I'm going to...
That it just tips the scales, that it's more likely than not that the plaintiff can prevail on its claim. It has no bearing on whether or not the plaintiff will prevail on its claim. Something completely different could happen at trial, but essentially the judge could say, okay, given all the facts that I'm hearing so far, the odds are more likely than not that at least some of these claims can be proven at a trial.
So the plaintiff's trying to get themselves in a better position, essentially. It's kind of a strategy.
Maybe more of a tactical advantage, that a certain amount is set aside in reserve for them if they do prevail. Again, it doesn't have any bearing on actually what will happen at a trial. Trial could go the completely opposite way. It's sort of a preliminary step to make sure that money is on hand if they do prevail. at the trial. But at this point, we did have a belief that we were heading towards that preliminary step, the prejudgment remedy hearing, but nothing is scheduled right now, and no trial is scheduled.
Okay.
You had mentioned the, I don't know if you did mention it actually, but like there was just a process, I guess, that wrapped up where the city's in the midst of buying 65 Main Street. That's one of the old Farrell buildings. Excuse me, to move the police department into the top floor. Just first of all, everything going smoothly with that, I guess. Do you have any update onto how long that'll be?
Well, it should be by July 15th. That's the timetable that we've set with the council on the other side to wrap up the details and get a contract signed.
And you had said hopefully the police department will be in there by the end of the year. Is that still on track, or will that take longer, or what's any timetable
Depends
there?
if Eversource has to get in there and do some work.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm just joking. That's a joke.
But I like that. That seems feasible. Do you think the end of the year for that, or?
I think so, depending on the funding source, depending on how quickly that moves. So again, when you're borrowing money or you're getting a grant, that's where the time comes into play.
And at the last Alderman meeting, there was discussion about going through the USDA,
Right.
or going to simply a straightforward bond, which would be more advantageous for the city. So I know we had talked a lot in the past about the United States Department of Agriculture and that 40-year loan, $12 million. But in consulting with bond counsel and our financial advisors for the city, it looks like bonding may actually be not just a competitive financing route, it actually may be more advantageous for the taxpayers. So we're in the process of trying to kind of pin down exactly what will be best for the city.
We're still applying.
And at that point, the Board of Aldermen will take that up and go forward.
Oh, and then something that was touched on at that alderman's meeting, the city, as part of that, bought half of the parking lot.
Yep.
I guess it's like a half interest in the
Yep,
parking lot.
exactly.
Effectively, it's not like you guys are gonna paint the
Split
chalk
it with a
line down
line
the
down the
middle
middle.
like it happened one night or something. It's like you own half of it, they own half of it. So if something happens in the future,
There's an
everybody has
ability to be flexible.
A pound of flesh, I guess. And then just across the parking lot from 65 Main Street, the new building going up, the Massiminos, that was sort of rising rapidly. Is that still? It was supposed to be done by the end of the summer. Is it seems to have construction seems not to have been progressing as quickly recently. Do you know what's going on there? What's going on?
He's ordered a special type of siding, stone siding, and he's waiting for that to come in. And he's also working with a bank to get funding.
Okay. And so, do you think that'll push that?
Oh yeah,
back a
I
few
believe
months,
I
or?
believe by September, October he should be done.
Okay. And that's your brother-in-law?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
That's why I'm asking about it, just to be clear. Eugene, did you have? I don't mean to.
No, keep going.
monopolize.
I mean, it's 10:42, so we're sort of wrapping up. But
Oh, okay. And then, when you first ran for mayor, sorry, this was back in 2013.
Correct.
The issue of there was you had outstanding taxes on your business.
Mm-hmm.
You paid them. It came out months later. There was a IRS tax lien, and you said that an accountant you had working for your company had stolen money from you,
Correct.
and that you referred it to the police. Do you know what the latest? We haven't asked the police about this
They are.
recently, but
You could call them. They're still investigating. They have a warrant for the arrest of this accountant in the court as we speak. But there's some questions that need to be answered. But my son is handling that.
Okay, and that your son took over the company.
Yes.
We should say. And that
we should just interrupt. That could mean that
they could have
a
submitted
judge
a
or
warrant and
prosecutor says,
said,
"There's not enough
correct
here.
your
You have to get
spelling
more
or-
info."
Or
We just talked over
Yeah,
each
yeah.
other. So just explain what.
if police submit a warrant to it must be signed by a prosecutor and a
Correct.
judge, and that's not a process that we have access to.
Right.
So any number of things might be happening there. Like the judge might have said, go get more information about this, or the prosecutor.
I believe that's the case.
Something like that. So still an active police investigation. I
Yes, it
guess.
is.
All right. And then looking forward, I know, it's months away, but you have filed paperwork to run for re-election this November. You're the only candidate thus far that I know of. Do you anticipate any opponents in
I got to tell you that
Republican Party? Or
in the Republican Party?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's possible, but whoever it may be, I got to tell you, I've had some sleepless nights because I'm concerned that I'm not going to have an opponent, and I believe everybody should have an opponent, especially in our small community. So there's always differences of opinion. So I hope that there is going to be an opponent.
Well, you think the Dems might just?
Oh boy, I hope they
down?
don't. We're outnumbered 7-1, and I'm the underdog going into this because no sitting mayor from my party has ever won a third term.
Yeah,
That's a known fact.
I think they should sit it out, but we don't know if they
Oh,
will.
wow. Little fighting words there. So we'll see. We'll see going forward.
Sure.
I haven't looked at any of the paperwork that's been filed, but I just know that you're the only one that has so far. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
All right. So the only question I have, then we'll wrap it up because you got to be somewhere in a couple of minutes. And thanks for coming by.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
So just last week, I think it was announced that Floyd Mayweather, widely considered to be the best boxer of his generation, is going to be fighting Conor McGregor, MMA star from the UFC.
Right.
And I'm wondering who, you're a former boxer,
right?
Still coaching, still involved in the sport.
Involved.
Who do you think? Who you taking in that fight? And
I'm taking
why?
Floyd Mayweather in a decision.
In a decision. Do you think it's a joke? Is this like an Andre the Giant versus Muhammad Ali type thing, or
like
exactly?
Remember Rocky III where he fights
Thunder
Hulk
Lips?
Hogan?
Yeah.
I read like a thing that was like McGregor's like Mayweather. He will not like lay a hand on Mayweather. Mayweather's like a master defensive.
Yes.
Do you admire Mayweather, or do you think? Because I don't. I mean,
I got to
he's
tell
boring
you,
in my
the
opinion.
last 10 fights that he's had, there have been nobodies, and he's just building his record up. He was just building his record up. He should have fought some competitive guys, more competitive guys.
And do you see this as competitive at all? Do you think is this just a cash grab by everybody?
Stock. His moves. I mean, he's like he said, he's not going to even get hit.
Would you give it to Mayweather if they threw in some MMA in there? If he was allowed to use his legs, or could that change it, or no?
Possibly.
Do you watch MMA? Do you consider
I don't
it?
care I'm strictly boxing.
Okay.
Mayweather's not the nicest person.
No.
In his personal
Well,
life,
neither are
so.
you. Oh, you mean in his personal?
I've never been.
All right, let's not get
lost for the crimes that Floyd Mayweather has. So.
Now I'll have to edit the end of the podcast. All right, gonna get us sued. I want to thank Mayor Cassetti, Sheila O'Malley, and John Marini for coming by and talking to us. And just before we sign off, is there anything that anyone wanted to add? Maybe there's an area of questioning that Ethan and I aren't bringing up that you want to get on your soapbox and talk about.
And just that Ansonia is going to be recharged.
And with that,
June 20th, 7 p.m., high school budget hearing and vote.
Okay, thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.